In today's world of 24/7 news cycles, social media firestorms, and geopolitical tension, it only takes one comment to spark international outrage. And that's exactly what happened when American political figure Karoline Leavitt made a series of controversial remarks targeting Canada and its citizens. What she may have intended as a rhetorical jab quickly escalated into a diplomatic flashpoint, drawing swift condemnation and a notably calm yet powerful response from former Bank of Canada Governor and global statesman Mark Carney. The incident highlights more than just cross-border sniping. It speaks to deeper cultural divides, the weaponization of national identity, and the enduring question of what kind of discourse we're willing to tolerate from our political leaders. Here's how it unfolded, and how Mark Carney's unexpected response turned the narrative upside down. The comments heard round the North it began during a televised interview in the midst of Karoline Leavitt's recent media tour. Known for her combative style and allegiance to the hard right wing of American politics, Leavitt was asked about international partnerships and cross-border economic cooperation. In what was supposed to be a discussion on trade, she launched into an unsolicited critique of America's northern neighbor. Frankly, she said with a smirk, Canada has become a joke. Their economy is a mess, their leadership is weak, and their people are too busy sipping maple lattes and apologizing to have any serious place at the table. The host appeared visibly stunned. Leavitt, undeterred, doubled down. I don't trust a country that can't decide whether it's British, French, or just cold, she quipped. They're like America's confused cousin who shows up to dinner wearing snowshoes and lectures everyone about climate change. It didn't take long for the clip to go viral. Within hours, social media exploded. Hashtags like hashtag Caroline vs Canada, hashtag Mapleshade, and hashtag Pardon Us Caroline trended across platforms. Canadians, typically polite to a fault, were unusually vocal in their criticism. And then came Mark Carney. Mark Carney steps in. Mark Carney is not known for inflammatory rhetoric. The former governor of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, Carney has earned a reputation as a calm, measured voice in global finance and policy. His career spans continents, crises, and ideologies. He's the kind of figure who commands attention not with volume, but with substance. So when he decided to weigh in, the world listened. Carney didn't respond with insults or counterattacks. He didn't take to a pulpit to rant. Instead, he issued a brief but powerful public statement, part written, part delivered during a panel discussion in Toronto. Ms. Leavitt's remarks are an unfortunate reminder that ignorance often shouts loudest when substance is lacking. Carney said calmly, Canada is not perfect, but we are proud of our institutions, our multicultural society, and our global contributions. Dismissing an entire nation with cheap stereotypes is neither statesmanship nor patriotism. It's performative nationalism, designed not to build bridges, but to burn them. He paused before adding, it's easy to insult. It's harder to understand. Those 7 words, it's easy to insult. It's harder to understand, were repeated across media outlets, political circles, and international commentary in the days that followed. The fallout, firestorms, and ironies. Leavitt's comments stirred more than hurt feelings. Canadian politicians, usually reluctant to engage in U.S. political drama, began speaking out. The Canadian ambassador to the U.S. issued a formal statement calling the remarks deeply disrespectful and misinformed. Provincial leaders from Ontario to British Columbia defended Canada's role in global affairs, while mayors in border cities emphasized the importance of US-Canada economic cooperation. Back in the U.S., reaction was mixed. Some praised Leavitt for telling it like it is, while others accused her of damaging an essential alliance for the sake of a soundbite. But perhaps the most unexpected twist came from within Leavitt's own party. Several moderate Republicans distanced themselves from the remarks, calling them unhelpful, tone-deaf, and unbecoming of a serious leader. Meanwhile, Canadian citizens responded with a blend of sarcasm and grace. Memes circulated depicting Canadians politely apologizing for being insulted. One viral post read, "We apologize for the inconvenience of being your northern neighbor. We'll try to keep the snow and healthcare to ourselves." Others took the moment to educate. A number of Canadian educators, entrepreneurs, and artists used the opportunity to share stories about Canadian innovation, multiculturalism, and contributions to international peacekeeping. climate initiatives, and global development. Why this struck a nerve Karoline. Leavitt's remarks weren't just controversial, they were emblematic of a broader trend in modern politics, the rising use of national pride as a weapon rather than a virtue. When politicians insult other nations to score domestic points, they often overlook the collateral damage. Strained alliances, reinforced stereotypes, and diminished global standing. In this case, it wasn't just that Canada was insulted. It was how they were insulted, with sweeping generalizations and mockery that ignored the deep and complex relationship between the two countries. America and Canada are economic partners, cultural cousins, and diplomatic allies. The border between them is one of the longest peaceful boundaries in the world. To reduce that relationship to a punchline isn't just rude, it's reckless. Carney's approach, strength and decency, what made Carney's response so effective wasn't just the words he used, it was the manner in which he used them. He didn't stoop to Leavitt's level. He didn't counter insult with insult. Instead, he chose the high road, and in doing so, he elevated the conversation. Carney's rebuttal reminded observers that strength doesn't require shouting, and that patriotism isn't about belittling others. His calm, reasoned tone, informed by years of global leadership, stood in stark contrast to Leavitt's bluster. And perhaps most importantly, Carney didn't just defend Canada. He defended the idea that political discourse should be rooted in respect and understanding, not division and mockery, a lesson in diplomacy in a time when international relations are increasingly volatile. The incident serves as a case study in diplomacy and in the power of measured leadership. Karoline Leavitt may have garnered attention, but it was Mark Carney who gained respect by calling out ignorance without being cruel, by defending national pride without descending into nationalism, and by showing that empathy is not weakness. Carney reminded the world that true leadership requires both intellect and integrity. A cautionary tale, the political fallout from Leavitt's comments is still unfolding. Some analysts say the moment will be forgotten in a week's news cycle. Others believe it has lasting implications for her credibility on the world stage, especially if she seeks a future role in foreign policy. But regardless of how the story ends for her politically, one thing is clear: her remarks served as a mirror not just for American-Canadian relations, but for the tone of global politics. What we tolerate becomes the standard. And in responding to Leavitt's insults with clarity and compassion, Mark Carney quietly raised the standard. Moving forward, the divide between rhetoric and reality has never been more apparent. Karoline Leavitt's performance, and yes, it was a performance, was designed to appeal to a base that values bravado over nuance. But real leadership, as Carney demonstrated, is about bridging divides, not exploiting them. In the days that followed the incident, public conversations in both countries shifted. Canadians spoke more openly about their role in the world, and Americans were reminded of the power of their words. And if there's a silver lining to the whole affair, it's this: diplomacy isn't dead. It just speaks more quietly. Final thoughts, Karoline. Leavitt's remarks about Canadians may have been flippant, even laughable in their absurdity, but the impact they had was real. Words, especially from public figures, matter. They shape perceptions, influence alliances, and reflect deeper currents of national identity. Mark Carney's response, in contrast, was not only diplomatic, it was defining. He didn't just defend his country. He reminded the world that dignity and decency are still possible, even in the roughest of political waters. In the end, the real takeaway isn't just about Canada or the United States. It's about how we choose to lead, how we choose to respond, and whether we believe that respect is still worth fighting for.